everybody, it's Amy Rich with amyrich.net here with project number 2 of the 12 projects of Christmas 2022, and I am going to feature the Merriest Moments stamp set and the coordinating hybrid embossing folder and dies. Now I'm going to bring in my catalog to show you where those are. They are a returning fave from last year's July to December mini catalog. You can see the Merriest Moments stamp set here, and then the Merriest Frames hybrid embossing folder here. But we also need to keep in mind that not only does it come with that embossing folder, but a ton of dies as well. So I'll show you those as we get started here. And then just keep in mind that last year it was sold as a bundle. This year it is not. So if you would like to get the coordination going, you will want to buy both of those if you don't have them already. Because they are a returning fave, it's possible you do have them. So let's take a look. We've got our Merriest Moments stamp set, which you saw pretty well there in the catalog. But here is the hybrid embossing folder, and that means that you can cut and emboss at the same time. So you take your die and you slip that into place, and then you run it through with your paper in, and it cuts and embosses at the same time. We are not using that today because we are simply using the dies. And I see I left some of the dies over by the big boss, but you can see that a lot of these dies cut out images from here as well. So that is the hybrid embossing folder. I won't be doing any cranking today for you, but I will show you how I use those. So let's get started with just stamping a few of these images. We're going to grab our MERRIEST ink pad, gorgeous color, one of my favorites for sure. And we're going to take both of the poinsettia stamps, inking those up in MERRIEST. And then I do want to clean them off right away because it does stain, and it's too late, but I still want to take care of my stamps if I can. Those reds are going to often stain your stamps, so don't worry about that. That's gonna automatically happen. It's natural. So both of those get stamped in the MERRIEST ink, and then I'm gonna grab some crushed curry. And I'm just going to stamp the center of the poinsettia in that smaller one like that. And then I am going to stamp Evening Evergreen holly leaves, and those come from that stamp set as well. And then one more greenery I'm going to stamp in the soft succulent ink. All of these are so pretty, and I love the way that it uses the shading of the lines on each of the images like that. I think it looks really cool and contemporary. And then using the dies and the magic of television, I've got the all of the images cut out here for us. All right, let's bring in our piece of 3.5 by 5 1/4 basic white cardstock. I am going to use grid paper for this because this is a little bit messy. And before we get started, I'm going to open up our annual catalog to page 128 so that we can take a look at these Artistic Mix Decorative Masks. And we're going to use those today. So you can see some plaid ones in there. You can see that makes a pretty pattern there. And then it also makes the labels. So let me show you those. Here are the labels. And what you can do with those is you can set one of those down. And then if you're going to bring in another one of your masks and use your blending brushes and blend some color, then once you remove that mask, it's going to be white there. So you'll be able to stamp your sentiment there really easily, which is kind of nice. Same thing for this. And then we've also got the reverse mask And we can put that on and ink through that mask to create that pattern or that design. And for our purposes, we are going to use the plaids. So I'm just going to line this up, and we're going to start with our Evening Evergreen ink. And I've got a couple different blending brushes here to work with, but I'm just going to kind of center that as best I can. It's not really the biggest deal of this project if it is or is not centered. And then I'm going to ink that up and just start applying the color. Now, for this particular card I am making today, oh, I just stuck my finger in it. That's not the first time, as you can see. I've been playing around with these masks and I got really messy. I stuck my finger right in. So, we're going to make sure the ink is in the center for sure, and then work our way out. But I really want some nice dark color. So I'm going to go over it until it is nice and dark. And there are different adhesives, I think, that you can use to temporarily adhere your mask down to your paper. I just am using my fingers because they're on me at all times. So it's a lot easier that way for me. And I'll just wash up my hands later. It's not a big deal. All right, so I'm going to just keep adding color. And then I'll reveal. That looks really good. Okay, so you can do multiple different things, add different colors in there, but then we're going to also be able to layer the other plaid mask over the top. And for this one now, I'm going to use the soft succulent ink. All right, so I'm going to line this up, and you can decide where. You know, you can use it different ways, like I said. And then we're just going to add the soft succulent color, which is a little bit lighter. So I'm not going to worry as much about getting it super dark because I wanted it lighter in the first place because I used the lighter color. So I'm just going in with that soft succulent and adding, oh, I shifted a little bit there. We'll just shift back and we'll be fine. Did it again. Practice went a lot more smoothly. That's always the case. Okay, so now once we've got that, you can see these other squares in there, which is really kind of a cool look. And we're going to use this on our card, being careful because we're working with all white. So I want to be really careful with my fingers that I'm not making a huge mess of this. I'm going to set this aside for right now. And I have 2 strips of basic white. One is 1 inch by 5 1/4, and one is, I think, 1 1/2. Yep, 1 1/2 by 5 1/4. So I'm just going to grab my Merry Merlot ink pad and the little Joy stamp, and I'm going to stamp Joy right down here in the corner. And I did clean it right away, and it came pretty clean, but it is, like I said, going to leave that little bit of a stain. And then I have one more greenery stamp here. I'm going to use Old Olive. I'm going to ink that up. And I want to line them up so I know where the tops are and everything. Just, I'll show you why later, I guess. Just so I have a good idea of how this card is going to go together. I mean, I know in my head how this is going to go, but I just want to make sure it's going to work when I put it together. So I wanted to line those up. All right, let me get rid of this ugly grid paper and bring in my card. And this card base is thick basic white, and it measures 4 1/4 by 11. And then we're going to add our plaid that we've made. in the center of the card, and we're gonna leave that little border on top and bottom. Now you saw me just flip the card base, and that's because you can see there's a little bit of a hangover. I don't know if you can see that. So it wasn't perfectly scored. Happens to me regularly. But if I put that on the back, then the front looks to be just perfect. Okay, so that's how we'll use that. Then we're going to grab our strips and a couple 1/2-inch pieces of Merlot. And I'm just going to take some liquid glue and run it down one edge. And then I am going to take the Joy, and I'm going to give this an edge right here of Merlot. And the liquid glue allows you to shift it a little bit until it's how you want it. So we're gonna leave it like that now, and we'll let it dry. Then we'll bring the other one in and do the same thing. Oops, we got some glue craziness happening here. All right, we're gonna run that down the edge and get that cover on quick. Stop the bleeding. And then we're gonna do the same thing on this other side. So it'll have the opposite side with the border. So for this one, it'll have a border on the right-hand side, and the other is a border on the left-hand side. We're just gonna pull out to try to get an even border similar to the one on the other side, okay? We'll let that dry for a second. And then we're gonna grab some adhesive strips. These are foam, and I'm just gonna stick a couple of those on. What I like about these is that, I mean, I've cut them in half, so, or maybe a little bit, no, I think it's in half. This one, I got a really tough one here to get apart, so bear with me for just a second here. And then we'll stick that on the other side. And then we'll peel those off. And I like those because they're just a quick, bigger coverage then. And we're gonna add this, making sure it goes up to that plaid piece. So what we're leaving is a little border on top, left and bottom. You can see that. And then we're gonna do the same thing with this. We're gonna add our foam strips. And then what I wanna make sure here is that we've still got a nice border of white around the image, or around the piece, so that it separates just like this. Isn't that pretty? I think it's so pretty with the plaid in the middle. It's like we made our own DSP. And then we're gonna take these poinsettias, and if you know me, you know I like to give them just a little dimension. And then we're gonna add this one to this one using a mini glue dot. So, these are kind of a stinker right now. All right. And then we're just gonna offset those a little bit so that those petals can really make it look full. And then we'll add some of these sprigs to the back and the holly leaves. So back with our glue dots, I'm gonna actually put it on the front of my holly leaf so that it can go behind like so. And we'll do the same thing with the other one. And then finally this soft succulent leafy sprig. Okay, so now when we add this here, you can see that it kind of fills in space with those other greeneries that I stamped earlier. All right, so I'm gonna put some dimensionals on the back, and actually I'm gonna use these same foam strips because I think the foam strips are a little bit higher than the dimensionals. So it'll sit up off of there the way it should. And then if you want to put a little adhesive on the back of each of those, that certainly works as well, because then it kind of anchors it onto those sides. Isn't that pretty? Gorgeous. And then I'm going to finish it with some of our In Color opal rounds. So we've got them in Soft Succulent and Evening Evergreen here. So I'll add, I think, some Soft Succulent ones, which just finishes it off nicely. So I'm loving the masks. I think the plaids that we can make are going to be super fun with those. This is my first time really getting down and dirty and playing with them. And I hope you enjoyed project number 2 of the 12 projects of Christmas 2022. And I will see you very, very soon for project number 3, which you are going to love. It is one of my favorite cards ever. So I'm excited to share that with you. I will see you next time.